We see that the US has dropped once again. What do you think this tells us?
Well, the US continues to top the world in research and development, the sophistication of the business environment, market size. But the US has two key areas of concern that has the deterioration of which have lowered the ranking from last year's second to this year's fourth. The two areas are number one, the institutional environment. Both public and private institutions have deteriorated. And second, the macroeconomic environment, the reaction of the government to the financial crisis in the form of a huge stimulus package and therefore huge debts and deficits have lowered the ranks of the macroeconomic environment of the US, and these two key areas have implied that the US have gone down by two ranks in 1 year.
The US isn't the only Western industrialized country to fall in this year's rankings, whereas we see quite a few Asian countries rising up. Is this a shift?
Well, in general, we see that the scores of the developed world have gone down a little bit, and the scores of the developing world, not only Asia, but also Latin America and Africa, have gone up a little bit, which implies a little bit of convergence in scores. Now, whether this is a permanent feature or is just a result of the current recession that was felt a little bit more in the West than in the rest of the world, or whether this is a permanent shift that will be with us forever, it's still too early to tell. We'll see next year whether this continues or with the end of the recession we go back to a diverging world.
You mentioned Africa, and yet again, the African countries, many African countries, are near the bottom of the rankings, or at the bottom of the rankings. What advice could you give to them? Where can they try to put their energies to improve their competitiveness?
Well, it is true that Africa is at the bottom of the competitiveness rank, but Africa has been growing strongly since 1995 for the first time ever. The growth of rate of Africa, the average growth of Africa, has been positive for 15 years in a row, and this is very good news. Now, whether this continues or not will depend on whether Africa does the homework in the basic areas of competitiveness. In particular, they have to work hard at the institutions, especially public institutions, corruption and governance, and so on and so forth. Second, the macroeconomic environment. Third, health in general, and education, and basic education. And if these three areas of concern, if these three areas of the basic requirements are doing well, Africa will continue to grow for years to come.
How can all the countries which are ranked in this year's GCR, how can they use these rankings and use the report to improve their competitiveness?
Well, what's sexy about the ranks, what people like to see is the rank. It's how countries compare to other countries, whether the country has gone up or down relative to others. But that's not really what is useful about this report. What's useful about this report is the information that is behind the rankings, behind the entire score. As you can see, the report gives a lot of information about pillars, sub-pillars, hundreds of variables that are being analyzed, and in a way this is information about what the business community thinks are the priorities for the country. If you put all of this information within a country, we put it all together, you will see that the business community scores some aspects of the economy very positively, some aspects of the economy very negatively, and therefore it gives a list of priorities for the governments. If the governments go inside the report and look for all the information, there's going to be a lot of hints about what the business community thinks are the priorities, and that should be used by governments all over the world.